The Broken Blueprint, Part 3, Stating Basic Objectives, Aiming for the Best. In order that the plan get off to a good start, Ellen White contacted Elder and Mrs. S.N. Haskell, her close friends of many years, and asked them to come and lead out in field evangelism at the young school. We must soon start a nurses training school at Loma. This place will become an important educational center, and we need the efforts of yourself and your wife to give the right mold to the work in this new educational center. EGW, letter 277, 1905. On the evangelistic side they had, beginning in the spring of 1906, the help of that veteran Bible teacher and missionary, Elder S.N. Haskell, and his wife, who, at the solicitation of Mrs. White, had joined the staff. It was truly an evangelistic school, for the nurses and all the workers entered heartily into Elder Haskell's practical evangelistic program in surrounding cities, and also canvassed for Mrs. White's new book, The Ministry of Healing. A.W. Spalding, Christ's Last Legion, page 157. While the school was in its infancy, only nurses would be trained, but as early as 1905, she indicated that it must eventually include the training of physicians. In regard to the school, I would say, make it all you possibly can in the education of nurses and physicians. EGW, letter 325, 1905. If you, dear reader or listener, are planning to start a medical missionary school or study on your own to become a medical missionary, you will find the following information to be extremely helpful. It can serve as a guideline, yes, a clarion call to action. Ellen White attended a council meeting held on the Loma grounds in 1906. At that meeting, she stated the twofold work to be done. I tried to make it plain that sanitarium physicians and helpers were to cooperate with God in combating disease, not only through the use of natural remedial agencies He has placed within our reach, but also by encouraging their patients to lay hold on divine strength through obedience to the commandments of God. Ellen G. White, Review, June 21, 1906. Not by poisonous drugs, but by obedience to the natural and moral laws were the patients to recover their health. Not by presumptive faith alone, but by obedience to the 10 Commandments were the patients to be brought to a saving knowledge of Christ, their Lord and Savior. In these last days, the theological New Theology teaches salvation by presumption, without obedience to the moral law of God, and the medical New Theology teaches healing by poisons, without obedience to the laws of nature. At that important gathering, she also said this in her address. Loma Linda is to be not only a sanitarium, but an educational center. With the possession of this place comes the weighty responsibility of making the work of the institution educational in character. A school is to be established here for the training of gospel medical missionary evangelists. Much is involved in this work, and it is very essential that a right beginning be made. Ellen G. White, Review, June 21, 1906. That spring, with the help of the nurses and staff of Loma Linda, the Haskells conducted a medical evangelistic tent effort in San Bernardino. This was part of the training program. Anxious to learn more about the blueprint for the school, Professor Howell visited Ellen White at her home in Elms Haven. That which she learned, he returned to the school and shared with the others. Unfortunately, half a year later, he was sent to Greece. Commenting on the visit, she later explained that earnest prayer, study of God's inspired writings, a will to obey, and hard work would bring success in the right lines. I told him that the Lord will lead all who are willing to be led. The Bible is our safe guidebook. Said Christ, "He that will come after me, let him take his cross and follow me." We cannot mark out a precise line to be followed unconditionally. Circumstances and emergencies will arise for which the Lord must give special instruction. But if we begin to work, depending wholly upon the Lord, watching, praying, and walking in harmony with the light He sends us, we shall not be left to walk in darkness. Ellen G. White, Letter 192, 1906. That is a sweet promise. If God's people will be faithful and willing, He will guide them all the way to the end. And that is what you and I want, is it not? We want to be part of His plan. School connected with sanitarium. According to the blueprint, the sanitarium and school must be located close to one another, and they should blend in their instruction and work. The blending of our schools and sanitariums will prove an advantage in many ways. EGW, February 20, 1908. In the fall of 1906, Ellen White wrote this to the manager and president of CME. Brethren Burden and Howell, the work of the school and the sanitarium will be a blessing, the one to the other. Then the interests of both will be advanced. If there is cooperation between the educational work and the work of sanitarium, we can heartily recommend that the higher education will be carried on in the sanitarium grounds, for this is the Lord's plan. If the men at the head of this enterprise plan for the usefulness of these institutions, each helping the other, there is nothing to hinder the operations of the school. EGW, September 28, 1906. In reply, Burden wrote, "We are having the most ideal sanitarium work here at Loma Linda of anything I have ever seen in all my experience, and I contribute it quite largely to the influence of the school with the sanitarium. This keeps up a healthy spiritual atmosphere in the hearts of the workers. A number of the patients attend the Bible classes with the students. As soon as we get our chapel finished, our Bible classes will be held in the Sabbath school rooms, which will be nearer the sanitarium, and I am sure many more of the patients will then be in attendance." John Burden, December 16, 1909. In a further communication, she warned the workers at Loma Linda that the school must be connected with the sanitarium and that the students should never be taught to use drug medications. Be very careful not to do anything that would restrict the work at Loma Linda. It is in the order of God that this property has been secured, and He has given instruction that a school should be connected with the sanitarium. A special work is to be done there in qualifying young men and young women to be efficient medical missionary workers. They are to be taught how to treat the sick without the use of drugs. Such an education requires an experience in practical work. EGW, Letter 274, 1906. Medicinal drugs are actually unnatural combinations of chemicals, which are foreign to the human body. Drugs always have a tendency to break down and destroy vital forces, and the nature becomes so crippled in her efforts that the invalid dies, not because he needed to die, but because nature was outraged. Medical Ministry, page 223. Instead of handing a sick man some pills with powerful chemicals, natural treatments require practical work, water therapy, the use of herbs, careful diet, and actual changes which fulfill obedience to all 8 laws of health. Not only was healing procedure to be applied to the patients, but they were to be taught how to live right, physically and spiritually. The above letter concluded with these words: "The students are to unite faithfully in the medical work, keeping their physical powers in the most perfect condition possible, and laboring under the instruction of the great medical missionary. The healing of the sick and the ministry of the word are to go hand in hand." EGW, Letter 274, 1906. Statements in early publications. The earliest publications by the Young Educational Center provide us with helpful information. The school bulletin, issued in the summer of 1906, listed 3 courses that were offered. evangelistic medical, collegiate nurses, and gospel workers. The 3-year evangelistic medical course was described in this way. This course is designed especially for graduate nurses and others who have completed the preparatory subjects and who wish to take advanced medical studies as a better preparation for evangelistic work, but who desire to take these studies under conditions favorable to spiritual growth, to confidence in the fundamental truths of the third angel's message, and to the development of the genuine missionary spirit in actual service. Subjects which were taught included chemistry, physiological therapeutics, children diseases, physiology, obstetrics, gynecology, anatomy, and general diseases. The foreword to the bulletin said, "The purpose in establishing the College of Evangelists at Loma Linda is to develop and train evangelists. The world needs evangelizing, and the work must be done speedily." At the foot of each page in italics were these words, "To preach the kingdom of God and to heal the sick." In June 1908, the first issue of the Medical Evangelist, published by the College of Evangelists at Loma Linda, came off the press. It introduced itself significantly with the sentence, "Evangelist with no credentials except the truth that it carries." There was no mention of affiliations with secular colleges, hospitals, and other AME institutions. The journal was only affiliated with the Loma Linda Sanitarium. The journal announced a special 1-year course and mentioned what the students had been doing the previous school year. During the past year, Elder Luther Warren has been associated with the school as field evangelist, and the Lord has greatly blessed his labors in inspiring the students with a strong missionary spirit. All have taken part in evangelistic work in the surrounding towns. How it got its name. A year later, when the school was chartered by the state, the name was changed to College of Medical Evangelists, CME. John Burden later told how the school got its name. "I well remember the morning when Sister White wrote the phrase, Gospel Medical Missionary Evangelist, and her eyes brightened as she wrote them. 'There,' she said, 'I think they can understand that.' She spoke this with reference to the kind of a school Loma Linda should be. Since this was the product, what could be more natural than that the school should carry the name that suggested the product? And she seemed very pleased when the school was christened the College of Medical Evangelists." John Burden, letter to Dr. E.H. Risley, June 3, 1929. Many years later, evangelist was stripped from the titles. The name of the school's journal was changed from the Medical Evangelist to Loma Linda University Scoop. On June 1, 1961, the name of the school was changed to Loma Linda University. When that happened, a special California law enacted during the red herring era of the late 1940s and early 1950s suddenly applied to the school. We will discuss this later. The purpose of our health institutions is not first and foremost to be that of hospitals. The health institutions connected with the closing work of the gospel in the earth stand for the great principles of the gospel in all its fullness. Christ is the one to be revealed in all the institutions connected with the closing work, but none of them can do it so fully as the health institution where the sick and suffering come for relief and deliverance from both physical and spiritual ailment. Many of these need, like the paralytic of old, the forgiveness of sin the first thing, and they need to learn how to go and sin no more. Medical Ministry, pages 27 to 28. Operation and curriculum. To those who made application to work at Loma Linda in those early days, this was what Elder Burden wrote. "We are here under God's appointment to start a large institution. We have no funds. We are unable to pay your traveling expenses and know not when we can begin to pay salaries. The most that we can say to you is that we need help. If your heart is in the work, Come along and share our poverty with us. John Burden, Story of Loma Linda. It is important that we understand the operation and curriculum of Loma Linda in those early years. You will be glad to know that Loma Linda is now open to receive patients. Dr. Abbott is with us and a number of other workers. We have the first and second floors all fitted up and are busy at work arranging for the treatment rooms. This will fit us up very nicely, at least for the present. We have already begun our educational work by forming a class for the little ones. Miss Vina Baxter, Mrs. Burden's sister, is teaching them about 3 hours a day in book study and 3 hours in gardening, and looking after the ground and flowers. The children are delighted, especially with their outdoor school. They take hold of their work with as much interest as they would of play. John Burden, letter dated October 9, 1905, to Ellen White. It should be noted that modern homeschools often provide a similar education. Thank the Lord for homeschools. In a wicked world, they are a haven of refuge for our children. The rest of the above letter mentioned the study of patriarchs and prophets and the Bible with the schools at morning and evening worship. It is our plan to have regular courses of studies in the Bible, testimonies, and other necessary lines for every worker connected with the institution. John Burden, letter dated October 9, 1905, to Ellen White. One danger was overworking the nurses and other staff members, so they mechanically ran around in ceaseless activity rather than taking time to minister to the spiritual needs of the patients. J. A. Burden. We have changed our routine from the old plan of from 10 to 14 hours work a day to harmonize with what the testimonies have been saying all these years. We have changed to 6 hours labor, 4 shifts in 24 hours, and it is an improvement. But if there is anything better, we want it. Dr. Rand. There are 2 ways out of this difficulty. 1, to have more nurses. 2, to have less patients. The Lord certainly wants our work so adjusted that we can carry out His instructions. The gospel nurse is the one whom sick people want rather than the merely professional one, although she may have more skill. It is the Christian spirit that is appreciated. Proceedings of the Medical Missionary Convention, October 26 to 29, 1908, page 55. Off-campus missionary projects. Off-campus missionary projects by the faculty working with the students were part of the curriculum. This is an extremely important part of the blueprint. The following describes an explosion of contacts between October 1906 and June 1907. On the 4th of October 1906, the college was formally opened, and during the year there have been about 40 students in attendance in the various courses, 7 of whom graduated from the nurses course. July 10, 1907. The college offers 3 distinct courses of study, besides some preparatory work in English and science and certain classes of collegiate work, 3 years medical course, and the third, an elective course covering 1 year, designed for gospel workers who wish a preparation for general medical missionary work. The 3 courses in the above paragraph are the 2-year nurses courses, the 3-year medical course, and the 1-year brief course. Some field missionary work was carried on during the school year by such students as were prepared to engage in labor. Schools of health were held at San Bernardino, Highlands, Redlands, Riverside, Corona, Highgrove, Los Angeles, and Gardena, at which a large number of ladies were reached with the health principles in lectures and demonstrations, and the way opened for the work to extend to various places in Southern California. Lectures in hygiene and health and temperance were given in the public schools in San Bernardino, Highlands, Riverside, Corona, and Highgrove to learn or instruct more than 2,000 school children. The influence of this work was such that the superintendent of public instruction, gave our workers a standing invitation to come to the school at any time and lecture to the pupils on any health and temperance subject. In the San Bernardino schools, the superintendent arranged for a special course of lectures and cooking demonstrations for the school teachers after school hours. The following two paragraphs show how the work started small, was done well, and kept expanding. The way in which this work started and grew shows how the Lord prepared the way before the workers. The work was started with the San Bernardino Church, but soon extended to the church school from the church members to their neighbors. Those ladies soon opened the way for work to be introduced to the mothers' meetings. Here, our workers had the most interesting experiences. These mothers so appreciated the truth that they opened the way for these lectures to be given in the public schools. The lectures on hygiene, tobacco, condiments, and spirituous liquors so stirred public thought that the way was soon open for it to be extended to the schools in other places. These experiences opened the way for the work to be presented to the WCTU conventions at Redlands, and from this meeting, calls came for the work to extend to many places over Southern California. A mission was opened in San Bernardino, and two of the graduate nurses were sent over that a more thorough work in educating the people in the principles of life and health might be accomplished. The plan is to have a small house for the workers where they can give simple treatments and labor from house to house in ministering to the people physically and spiritually. The workers are making warm friends, and already several are interested in the truth. John Burden, Report, June 30, 1907. In 1905, an article appeared about the kind of work the Haskells were doing in Nashville, Tennessee, prior to moving to Loma Linda to conduct a similar work in connection with CME students and faculty. Brother and Sister Haskell have rented a house in one of the best parts of the city and have gathered round them a family of helpers who day by day go out giving Bible readings, selling our papers, and doing medical missionary work. During the hour of worship, the workers relate their experiences. Bible studies are regularly conducted in the home, and the young men and young women connected with the mission receive a practical, thorough training in holding Bible readings and in selling our publications. The Lord has blessed their labors, a number have embraced the truth, and many others are deeply interested. EGW, the Nashville Messenger, describing the Nashville Mission and Bible Training School, September 7, 1905. Later, Elder Haskell described a similar work he did with Loma Linda students in nearby San Bernardino. In the following letter, notice his comment: "Not one of that first class of students was lost to the work. As a result of training them in active evangelism, all of the graduates entered upon missionary work as nurses and physicians. That tells a lot about the quality of the training in those early years at CME. It was not training bedside physicians and nurses who spent their time giving and chartering drug medications. No. Elder and Sister S.N. Haskell accepted the invitation of Sister White to labor in Southern California. They arrived at Loma Linda in December 1905, were charmed with the place, and, after staying for a few days, went to St. Helena to consult with Sister White as to the nature of the work they should do there. When they returned early in 1906, their conviction was that they should begin city mission work in some of the surrounding cities. San Bernardino was chosen for the effort. A house in the city was rented, and a group of workers was selected from Loma Linda to assist them. They conducted a tent meeting, and the workers distributed literature and gave Bible readings in the homes to the people. To some it seemed that this effort was not related to sanitarium work, and it was feared that the brethren at Loma Linda were branching out into unprofitable lines and ought to give their undivided attention to the institutional interests. The messages that came from Sister White, however, expressed her approval of the field work that was being done. Repeatedly, in her counsels, she had rejoiced at the securing of Loma Linda because of its being an opportunity to do a work of evangelism in the surrounding cities. It is now evident that this early effort to develop the fieldwork molded the students for the mission field perhaps more than any other one feature of their classwork. Not one of that first class was lost to the work. When they were graduated, they were ready for the foreign fields. Some found their way to India, others to South America. Others dedicated their lives to the work in the homeland, and others pursued their medical studies further and became physicians. Thus is demonstrated that the following principles in harmony with God's purpose and plan will result in producing workers after God's order. I am glad that you are carrying forward the work that you have undertaken in San Bernardino, wrote Sister White to Elder and Sister Haskell. I believe you are working in harmony with the light that has been given to me. In your work, you come in contact with people who need to feel a hunger and thirst after righteousness. The Lord's blessing will be with all who work in harmony with his plans. John Burden, letter dated June 8, 1906. In a separate study, Elder Burden mentioned another aspect of the missionary work. In order to acquaint the people of the surrounding district with the sanitarium, each Sunday a special dinner was provided to which the nurses, during their campaign in the field, gave invitations to representative businessmen and their families. By this means, many friends were made, and they helped to increase the patronage of the institution. John Burden, Story of Loma Linda. When the Haskells left, the Lord brought another worker to help the students carry on field evangelism. From the first, practical field work was linked with the study program at Loma Linda. The work of Elder and Mrs. S.W. Haskell in San Bernardino had been mentioned already. After their departure, there was for a time difficulty in finding someone to lead the students in this line of endeavor. But soon, Dr. Lillis Woodstar, an experienced worker in house-to-house medical missionary labor and an able lecturer, came with her family to the sanitarium. The faculty at Loma Linda arranged for her and some of the sanitarium workers to begin a class in the study of the book, Ministry of Healing, among the little company recently raised up by the evangelistic labors of Elder Haskell and his helpers at San Bernardino. Some of the non-Adventist neighbors who attended these study groups by invitation asked that similar studies might be given in their homes. Soon, many family circles, with an average attendance of 12 persons, were meeting regularly for the study of healthful living, rational treatment, diet, and hygienic dress. This opened the way later for public lectures before groups of mothers, and in the public schools, and the introduction of well-prepared literature for the children. The work spread to many neighboring cities and towns, and even to Pasadena and Los Angeles, with Dr. Starr and a group of no less than 1,000 mothers. Burden, Story of Our Health Message. Ellen White had earlier written this: I know that there should be workers who make the medical evangelistic tours among the towns and villages. Those who do this work will gather a rich harvest of souls, both from the higher and lower classes. The way for this work is best prepared by the efforts of the faithful canvasser. Many will be called into the field to labor from house to house, giving Bible readings and praying with those who are interested. EGW, Letter 202, 1903. God's dealing with his people is to be our guide in all educational advancement. His glory is to be the object of all study. Those who are being trained as medical missionaries are to realize that their work is to restore the image of God in man by healing the wounds which sin has made. EGW, General Conference Bulletin, 1901, page 455. The principles of heaven are to be carried out in every family, in the discipline of every church, in every establishment, in every institution, in every school, and in everything that shall be managed. You have no right to manage unless you manage in God's order. Are you under the control of God? Do you see your responsibility to Him? EGW, General Conference Bulletin, 1901, page 25. In 1909, John Burden wrote to Ellen White about an ingathering story. It illustrates the work of a true medical missionary, one who had been trained to care for physical as well as spiritual needs. One young lady who had engaged in this ingathering work for the first time called where a man was painting a house. He treated her very coolly and turned her down, so she passed on and started in at the next house. He called to her. It was no use going in there, as that was his home and there was only his wife inside who would not be interested in it. The worker turned to go away, but something impelled her to go back, so she went and rapped on the door. And just as she entered, a little baby in his mother's arms went into a spasm. The mother was frightened, not knowing what to do, as the baby seemed to be dying. The nurse noticed that she had a boiler of water on the stove just the right temperature for a hot bath. She asked the woman to bring a wash tub, and soon she had the baby in the hot bath, which soon brought it to consciousness again. Meantime, the lady had called her husband, and as they watched the nurse apparently bring the baby back to life and hand it to them, of course, they were overjoyed with gratitude and were ready to listen to the nurse tell her story. John Burden, letter dated December 16, 1909. We are given another insight into how a worker can carry on medical evangelism. In 1909, Ellen White contacted Dr. Kress, who at the time was working at the Washington Sanitarium, and gave him an assignment. You can read portions of it in Counsels on Health, pages 543 to 548. She instructed him to maintain his connection with the sanitarium, but from time to time leave it and travel to do medical evangelism out in the field, holding health evangelistic meetings. For more on this, see Counsels on Health, pages 503 to 504 and 540 to 542. One might inquire how a physician could carry on so many activities. The following quotation helps explain this. Those in charge of our sanitariums do not show wisdom when they take upon themselves so many responsibilities, that they neglect to educate and train the helpers in religious lines. There is danger of the workers carrying about them an impure spiritual atmosphere. In word and deed, they often reveal that their characters are unsanctified, unholy, impure. In the country, the education of patients and nurses can be carried on with far less labor than in the city. Ellen G. White, Manuscript 41, 1902. Here is an early description of how Dr. Kress conducted his evangelistic work. After a period of service at the Battle Creek Sanitarium, the Kresses went to England in 1898 to establish SDA medical work there. The first year they gave lectures, began health schools, and started a magazine called Life and Health, which was published for nearly a year. Appointed to Australia in 1900, they laid the foundation for a strong medical work there. SDA Encyclopedia, page 653. Here is another illuminating passage. When Brother Burden was leaving for Southern California at the close of this conference, he inquired of me, "What shall we plan to do for Loma Linda?" "Go straight ahead," I replied. "Let the truth shine forth in every possible way. Continue to work with all your zeal in the territory surrounding your sanitarium. Help your students to learn how to labor, and keep sending them out into Redlands and Riverside and San Bernardino and smaller towns and villages round about. Introduce our publications and do thorough work. Let your light shine as a lamp that burneth. Encourage the students to greater activity in missionary labor while taking their course of study." EGW, Manuscript 53, June 11, 1909. 2 days earlier, she wrote, "The whole of the book Acts should receive careful study. It is full of precious instruction. It records experiments in evangelistic work, the teaching of which we need in our work today. This is wonderful history. It deals with the highest education which the students in our school are to receive. EGW, June 9, 1909. They should graduate to serve. The training program at Loma Linda was so balanced in those early years that many graduates were going to foreign fields as missionaries. God will surely advance the humble, faithful, praying, whole-souled medical missionary as he advanced Daniel and his fellows. Signs, October 2, 1893, and Healthful Living, page 255. 10 workers have now gone from Loma Linda to foreign fields, 4 to South America and 4 to China, 1 to India and 1 to Japan. Another starts for India next month. The Foreign Mission Board is calling for them just as fast as we can get them ready. John Burden, December 16, 1909. Missionary work in order to prepare a people to meet the judgment is the reason for everything we do. God's purpose in giving the third angel's message to the world is to prepare a people to stand true to him during the investigative judgment. This is the purpose for which we establish and maintain our publishing houses, our schools, our sanitariums, hygienic restaurants, treatment rooms, and food factories. This is our purpose in carrying forward every line of work in the cause. Manuscript 154, 1902. First manuscript releases, page 228, 1902. When the Lord shall bid us make no further effort to build meeting houses and establish schools, sanitariums, and publishing institutions, it will be time for us to fold our hands and let the Lord close up the work. But now is our opportunity to show our zeal for God and our love for humanity. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 6, page 440. We must carry on medical missionary work in many places, continually entering new ones. To send missionaries into a foreign field to do missionary work, unprovided with faculties and means, is like requiring bricks to be made without straw. Those who go into new fields to use the breaking up plow in preparing the soil for the sowing of the seed of truth are to be encouraged, prayed for, sustained. It is the Lord's desire that every worker sent into new fields shall be furnished with means and facilities for the successful accomplishment of his work. They are to receive help and encouragement from those in the home field, that they may have courage to overcome the difficulties that they meet in their work. Letter 92, 1902, Medical Ministry, page 330. At this juncture, we want to overview several key aspects of the blueprint for medical missionary training centers.